Hello, folks, and welcome out to the Single Player Podcast. I'm your one and only host, I'm 16-Bit, and I got a good show for you this week. We'll be talking about the return of the House of the Dead, as well as the unfortunate passing of John Kirby, as well as the Writing Guild of America ending their video game writing category, plus more. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and we'll be right back after this. Alright, folks, and we're back. And for our first topic, well, I was going to talk about this last week, but then I decided to hold it back because I thought it'd be more fitting to talk about in October. And that is that apparently 2 weeks ago, it was announced that House of the Dead 1 and 2 may be rising from the grave. That's right. Apparently, it was reported on a Polish site called Grazi Pospolita, and I apologize if I am butchering the Polish language. Apparently, it was announced that both games will be getting a remake by Forever Entertainment. And if that name sounds familiar, well, they're the same people who are right now working on the Panzer Dragoon remakes. And honestly, I'm totally up for this. Because the one thing, they say here that the gameplay and the story will be basically remain the same, but the graphics will be completely overhauled. And that's what I like about a remake. When you remake a game and you keep what made the game good, but you kind of fix everything else that kind of could be worked on. So I'm totally up for this. I think that this is awesome. The Panzer Dragoon remake actually looks really good. And if that's anything to go by, then House of the Dead 1 and 2 will also look really good. And that's another thing that kind of that caught my interest, was the fact that they're remaking not just House of the Dead 2, but also the original. And that's interesting because House of the Dead 1 hasn't really been ported to many systems. It was ported to PC and the Sega Saturn back in 1998, and that's it. That's the only way you could actually play the original House of the Dead, other than an actual arcade machine. And the Saturn version of House of the Dead goes for a pretty penny. So if you want to play the game, you have to spend quite a lot of money. Of course, House of the Dead 2 is a completely different story. The game was a launch title on the Dreamcast and is very easy and inexpensive to find. It's also unlockable on House of the Dead 3 for the Xbox. And of course, I can't ignore House of the Dead 2 and 3 on the Wii, which is absolutely fantastic. Probably the best version of both games you can find. And if you get that, by the way, I also recommend House of the Dead Overkill for the Wii. One of the best light gun shooters on the Wii, and it's so good. It's basically House of the Dead as a grindhouse horror movie. It's like if Quentin Tarantino made a House of the Dead game. In fact, I think the developers said that they were inspired by Grindhouse for the look of everything. So, also, speaking of House of the Dead, I have yet to play Scarlet Dawn, which I think is the new game. That, I think, is only available at Dave & Buster's, and there's really not one around me. So if I ever get the chance, I'd love to play that game. That one looks awesome. So anyway, next topic. So this next one I thought was pretty interesting. So it seems that a lot of people have been leaving Sony lately. First and foremost, Shawn Layden has announced that he is leaving. And if you don't know who he is, he's the chairman of Sony Interactive Entertainment Worldwide Studios. Basically, he oversees all of the first-party studios that Sony owns. And the thing is, he's actually hasn't been there for very long. He took over from Jack Tretton in 2014. In fact, what's interesting is that he's actually been with Sony for well over 30 years. He joined in 1987 as a communications assistant to Akio Morita, who is the co-founder of Sony. And from then, he just rose to the ranks. So it kind of shows that you can start at the very bottom and then just work your way up in some companies. But anyway, I just hope whoever takes over from him basically just ends the censorship bullshit that Sony's been pulling the past few years, because it's ridiculous. It really is. I mean, have you seen some of the censorship they've been pulling, like the flashes of light and everything? There are literal like screenshots from visual novels where it's literally nothing but a white box with the characters' heads visible. That's it. I mean, that's how crazy Sony has gone with this shit. So, but anyways, it's not just Layden who's leaving Sony, but also Atsushi Morita, who is the president and director of Sony Interactive Entertainment Japan and Asia. He will also be leaving. What's interesting is that when it comes to these two, it's never really explained why they're leaving. However, there is a lot of speculation. When it comes to Morita, a lot of people pointed out that he's 60 years old, and that's around the age of retirement in Japan. So more than likely, that's his reason. But when it comes to Layden, it's a whole different story, because right now Sony is going through a lot of issues. You had the restructuring last year that caused a lot of upheaval within the company, but it also seems that there's an internal power struggle within the company as well. So more than likely, that could be why he left, or maybe he was fired. We don't know, and we'll probably never know, because a lot of this stuff is kept low key and behind NDAs. So we're never going to know what's truly going on within Sony right now. But hey, you never know, stranger things have happened. Though I do wish them the best of luck and hope that they find something very soon. Anyway, next topic. Alright, so this next one I thought was really kind of cool. So, according to a Amazon Germany listing, we might be getting another Fallout collection. That's right. Apparently the listing is for something called the Fallout Legacy Collection that will compile 6 Fallout games into one set. That includes Fallout 1, 2, Tactics, 3, Game of the Year Edition, Fallout New Vegas, Ultimate Edition, and of course Fallout 4. Now Bethesda hasn't really confirmed this yet, so I'd say take it with a grain of salt. But apparently the listing says that it's coming out on October 25th for €39.99, which is $40 USD. Honestly, I'd totally be up for that, because I actually don't really own most of the Fallout games physically. Like, actually, there's only one Fallout game I own physically, and that's Fallout 2. That's it. I don't own 1, 3, 4. Actually, I don't even own 4. Or New Vegas. I don't own any of them physically, so I'd definitely be kind of up for that. Though what's interesting is that, like I said before, this isn't the first collection to actually come out. Back in 2015, there was another collection that came out just before Fallout 4 was released, and it was called the Fallout Anthology, and included Fallout 1 to New Vegas, and it was really neat. Each game came in these cardboard sleeves that were all housed inside like a mini nuke. It actually was really cool, and I kind of wanted to get it when it came out, but I just didn't have the time or money for it. So, but I definitely would be up for another collection, and hopefully something like this will also introduce a new generation to these older games. So, anyway, folks, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this. All right, folks, and we're back. And this next topic is very, very sad. And came out this past week that John Kirby had passed away on October 2nd at the age of 79. Now, some of you know who John Kirby is, but for those who don't, he's actually a very important figure in the history of Nintendo. In 1981, after Nintendo released Donkey Kong, as we all know, the game was quite successful and garnered quite a lot of positive attention, but it also garnered negative attention, mostly by Universal Studios. They saw the game as a violation on their copyright of the 1976 remake of King Kong. And honestly, it's a terrible movie. Don't watch it. Go watch the 1933 movie. It's much better. Anyway, so they started going after Nintendo as well as some of their partners, Coleco and Ralston Purina. And to defend themselves, Nintendo had hired a lawyer, John Kirby. During the court case, Kirby had actually found out that Universal had been sued for a similar reason, except in the last time, they were the defendant. They were sued by the copyright holders of the original King Kong, who claimed that Universal had violated their copyright. Well, Universal won the case by claiming that the movie was already in the public domain, and therefore they had a legal right to make the movie without paying anyone royalties. So John Kirby used that against Universal in this court case, and it ended up with the judge ruling in favor of Nintendo. In the end, I don't think the amount Universal had to pay Nintendo has ever been disclosed, but it was quite a lot, and Nintendo was incredibly grateful for John Kirby because he basically helped a small company defeat such a major player in the film industry. On top of his legal fee, Nintendo had given him a $30,000 sailboat called Donkey Kong and the exclusive rights to call any future boat Donkey Kong. I'm not sure if the rights pass on to his family or not, or they go back to Nintendo, who knows. Of course, probably the most famous tribute Nintendo has ever made to John Kirby was, of course, the character Kirby. That's right. Kirby is named after John Kirby, and it was said that Nintendo had actually sent him a copy of the game, and he was very flattered about it. So I send my condolences to his friends and family. It must be very hard for them right now, but he lived a very long life, and I don't think his contributions to Nintendo will ever be forgotten. So here's to John Kirby for defending a small company against such a massive giant. Anyway, next topic. All right, this next one's pretty crazy. So it came out this past week that Bobby Prince has filed a lawsuit against Gearbox, Randy Pickford, and Valve. Now, for those who don't know who Bobby Prince is, he's the composer of Doom, Doom 2, Wolfenstein 3D, and of course, Duke Nukem 3D. And that's exactly why he's filing a lawsuit. He's claiming that he owns the music to Duke Nukem 3D and that all the parties he's suing have not paid him any royalties. Now, what's interesting is that I know Duke Nukem 3D is not only on Steam, it's also on GOG, so I'm going to assume that GOG's actually been paying him royalties, which looks good on them. But as for Valve and Gearbox, not so much, and they definitely should be paying him his royalties. Of course, what's interesting is that this wasn't the only thing about Gearbox that happened this week. It also came out that the lawsuit between Randy Pickford and Wade Colander has officially settled. For those who don't know, Wade Colander was the former executive counsel for Gearbox. He accused Randy Pickford of funneling $12 million into Pickford's own company, and he also accused him of harassment. So I'm telling you, there is just something fucked up about that whole company. Oh, there was another thing that came out. Troy Baker revealed this past week why he didn't reprise his character of Reese Strongfork in Borderlands 3. And he's claiming that it's because Gearbox didn't want to go union. Apparently, Troy Baker is part of a union. And when Gearbox found out about it, they weren't too keen about bringing him back. So I tell you, there is just some fishy shit going on in that company. And if you're a game developer, whatever you do, stay away from Gearbox, because trust me, that company is just fishy as shit. If you want a good example, go check out Short Fat Otaku. He did a fantastic video all about the sort of shit that Gearbox is infamous for. So anyway, folks, I'm going to take a short break and we'll be right back after this. All right, folks, and we're back. And this next topic is very interesting. As some of you know, the Writers Guild of America every year holds their Writers Guild Awards. And one of the categories of the award ceremony is, of course, video game writing. Now, they've had the category since 2008, and numerous games, mostly by Sony, have actually won the award. Well, it seems, however, that this upcoming Writers Guild Awards will not have a video game category. In fact, it's been basically postponed indefinitely. The news came out this past week from Insomniac writer Mary Kenny, who tweeted out about it, and then was later confirmed by a spokesperson for the Writers Guild when speaking with US Gamer. He said, and I quote, "There won't be a video game writing award in 2020. However, the category will be reinstated when there is a critical mass of video games covered by the WGA in order to provide a meaningful award selection process." So in other words, until there are more game writers in the Writers Guild, there's not going to be a video game award. Now, there's been a lot of video game writers who have been lamenting about this on Twitter and all this kind of stuff, but personally, I say, who cares? Seriously, why should the video game industry even bother trying to get into something that is mostly focused on film and television? Hell, this brings up a whole thing that kind of has always bothered me about the video game industry, and that's this weird quest for the video game industry to be artistically validated by film. It's been going on for decades, at least since gaming started becoming more and more cinematic. You started seeing game journalists and developers go towards filmmakers and try to convince them that video games are an art form and, oh, can't you accept us as an art form? And it's like, the film industry does not give a shit. They don't care about video games. And no, they don't see video games as an art form. Oh, sure, you'll get a few directors here and there like Spielberg or Del Toro. But honestly, the vast majority of the film industry does not care about video games. In fact, they see video games as an economic competitor because essentially that's what it is. You're competing with other forms of entertainment for people's attention. And it's like the video game industry wants to be all buddy-buddy with the film industry, and the film industry wants nothing to do with them. Hell, I can remember many years ago, this was before Roger Ebert passed away, you constantly had gamers and game journalists bugging the guy, asking him whether or not he sees video games as art. And his answer was always no. Or at least he would explain that video games are a low commercial art and they can never be high art. And you would have these people who would try to prove him wrong. Well, play this game. Play that game. Here, look, this is Hideo Kojima. Look at him. Praise him. And yet, no matter what, the film industry just didn't want to hear it. They wanted nothing to do with video games other than just adapting video games for film. That's it. That's all they care about. They don't care about whether or not video games is an art form, and to them, they don't think it is. Okay? So stop trying to go to the film industry for validation. Okay? They don't like video games, and the video game industry doesn't need them to have their industry validated. Okay? This is why I think the video game industry needs to start doing their own things, rather than trying to get to the film industry for validation. If you want an award for writing, just add one to the DICE Awards. What is basically the Academy Awards for video games? It seems like a lot of people forgot about that. That yes, the video game industry has its own Academy Awards. And they don't have a writing category. Maybe they should add one. Maybe it's time that the video game industry started awarding its own writers rather than expecting the film industry to award them. You know what I'm saying? As for the debate on whether or not video games are art, personally, I don't care. My belief is that the goal of any game developer should be to entertain people first and foremost. And if you've failed in that goal, then you've failed as a developer. So anyway, folks, next topic. Okay, so this next one is pretty interesting. Recently, Blizzard's Jeff Kaplan was interviewed by IGN. And of course, as many of you know, Overwatch is coming to the Switch. and he was asked by IGN about the idea of Overwatch characters coming to Smash Brothers. And he said, and I quote, "To the Smash Brothers team, whatever character you want, we love them all. They're all our babies. You can have any single one of them. We have 31 to choose from. Tracer's our girl. Tracer's our mascot. She'd be my first choice. There's a lot of great runners-up. I think a lot of people can immediately see Doomfist gameplay applying to Smash, but if it were up to me, I'd like to see Tracer. And personally, I'd like to see none of them." A lot of people were not happy about this idea, and I'm same. I don't really like the idea of Overwatch being in Smash Brothers. Many people have different opinions as to why. My personal opinion is that when it comes to third-party Smash Brothers characters, I think it should be classic characters that represent that company. And I just don't see Overwatch as... I don't think Overwatch is classic enough to really represent Blizzard in Smash Brothers. You know, it came out only in 2016. It's fairly new, and I just don't see it as a good representation of Blizzard. Of course, when it comes to Blizzard characters in Smash, I do have a few ideas as to who I think would be good representations of Blizzard. And the first one that kind of popped in my head was, of course, the Lost Vikings. I think any one of them would be pretty cool. Hell, here's what you do. You make one of them a character, and then you have the other two as sort of alternate costumes. That'd be pretty awesome. I think any one of them would actually be a pretty good decision. Another idea I thought of was when it comes to Warcraft, you could have either Arthas or Thrall would actually be pretty good additions. But another one that I thought would also be really cool is, of course, Sarah Kerrigan from StarCraft. Dude, that would be pretty cool. She could have like two alternate costumes where you could have her Terran form, and then you could have her Queen of Blades form. And that would actually be pretty awesome. I think that would make a really good addition to Smash Brothers. Of course, you could also have as assist trophies, I think you could add a few characters from Diablo. Like, for example, Tyrael would be a great addition as a assist trophy, as well as Diablo. I think Diablo would make a really cool assist trophy. But overall, I just think that when it comes to Blizzard characters, there's a lot of classic characters that would be better representations of the company. So anyway, folks, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this. All right, folks, and that's it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening. Remember, you can listen to the show on YouTube and BitChute, and you can also follow me on Twitter and Gab. If you have any questions to be answered on next week's episode, please let me know. Gaming and non-gaming questions are always welcomed. So anyway, I'll see you all next week, and remember that video games will never die. Who had made deals with Nintendo on doing home... Fucking hell.